الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا والصلاة والسلام على نور الهدى سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. Alhamdulillah, we're here for our Zakah session. Just to double check with everybody, just give us a quick message in the comments if you can hear nice and clear. See nice and clear as well, but mainly hear. We need to be able to hear and understand everything. So just give us a quick shout in the comments to make sure we're all good and ready to move on, inshallah. Inshallah, we will move on. Get confirmation from Hafiz as well. We're all good to go. Yeah. So we will be doing a mixture where you'll be seeing me and you'll be seeing a presentation to go along with what I'm saying. So you got some visual aid as well. Keeping in mind, we need to make sure that we have we pay full attention. Unfortunately, Zakah is one of those things which is perceived as something very complex, and though it is true that Zakah has its nuances, its subtleties, its harder rulings as well, but the core and the very basic rulings of Zakah are very simple. And today that's what we want to do. We want to go down to the absolute bare bones and take a look at that and understand that for our understanding, so that at least we can easily calculate our Zakah. So I'll show you my first slide now. Zakah made simple. This is according to the Hanafi Fiqh. So if we move on to the next slide, these are the topics we're going to cover. Topics to cover are, firstly, what is Zakah? And I will tell you as we get to each. So this session of ours today, I won't call it a talk actually, because I want you guys to be interacting with me. I will be asking you questions. You will have examples to make sure that you guys, obviously all of us, we picked up well whatever we're learning, we're absorbing it, and it's not just another one of those boring classes or talks. So what is Zakah? So this will be our shortest session, because I don't think there's a need to go into detail about it. Then Zakah-eligible goods, meaning when do you pay Zakah, what do you have to pay Zakah on, and so on and so forth. Conditions for Zakah, who exactly has to pay Zakah, when do they have to pay it. And then spending Zakah is our fourth section, which would mean who do we pay it to, who deserves Zakah, and so on and so forth. So let's move on to the next slide. Section 1, what is Zakah? We're going to cover in this section the literal meaning of Zakah, the Islamic meaning of Zakah, what does this Zakah mean, and the proof of Zakah from Quran and Hadith. So hopefully that's clear. Next slide. Okay, what's the literal meaning of Zakah? Az-ziyada wa tahara. Zakah literally means to increase or growth or purification, and these are all things that are found in actual the actual concept of Zakah. Because, for example, Zakah purifies our wealth, Zakah increases our wealth because we're giving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and our wealth increases when we give in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now let's move on to the Islamic meaning of Zakah. Islamic meaning of Zakah is giving a portion of your wealth to a non-Hashimi deserving Muslim. A non-Hashimi, basically what we normally say as Sayyids, but it's actually a bit more broader. Anybody from the tribe of Banu Hashim whose lineage leads up to the tribe of Banu Hashim, we cannot pay them Zakah. Why? Because Zakah is something that is a purification for our wealth. So it's the filth of our wealth. We can't give it to people with noble lineage who have some sort of a connection with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they're linked to the tribe of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So giving a portion of your wealth to a non-Hashimi deserving Muslim, and making him or her the owner of that wealth in every way for the sake of Allah. This will become clear when we cover the rest of the sections that we have planned. So next slide, inshallah. Zakah in the Quran. Various ayat given here. I will not go into detail about all of them. Like I said, we're here to learn about mainly the rulings of zakah, the main rulings. We all know it is fard, we know it's a compulsory thing, so there is no need for us in this session to go into detail about this. But these are various verses of the Quran. Here's a translation on the next slide. These have just been given the green signal so you guys can see the slides, which is good news. I was starting to panic because I needed some visual aid for you guys mainly. So zakah in the Quran. Let's move on to zakah in hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I've just noted down one hadith here. There are many hadiths where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Bunya al-Islamu ala khams." Islam is established upon these 5 things, these 5 pillars, and upon them, from amongst these is also zakah. Next slide, inshallah. Reward for paying zakah. Many ayat, actually many verses of the Quran, but this, for example, my mercy encompasses all things, so I shall soon decree favors for those who fear and pay zakah and believe in our verses. So this means that somebody who pays zakah, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is upon him, and when we have the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have no need for anything else. Likewise, many other verses as well. Reward for paying zakah, punishments for paying zakah. Let's move on to the punishments for paying zakah. وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ. Those who pile up gold and silver, they do not spend in Allah's way, give them the glad tidings of a painful punishment. So this is a way of the Quran actually, that normally glad tidings are for good news, but here the Quran is saying give them the glad tidings of a painful punishment. There's a detail to that as to why the Quran says this, but I think we will get a quick move on. Then likewise here in this hadith of Sahih Bukhari, in the punishments for missing zakah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned regarding a person who does not pay zakah on the day of judgment, his wealth will come in the form of a serpent and a huge snake, and it will wrap itself around his neck, and it will say to him, I am your wealth, I am your treasure. So a person who is not and then the Prophet ﷺ recited an ayah of the Quran as well, which says that people, there will be their stored treasure would be put around their neck. So this was just a brief overview of zakah. Main thing, as a core, zakah is an obligation. We cannot deny it. If we say there is no such thing as zakah in Islam, that person is no longer a Muslim, because he is denying one of the absolute essentials of Islam, which is necessary and compulsory for a Muslim to believe. If somebody does not pay zakah, believing that it is compulsory, even then it is a huge sin, and it leads to a lot of punishment. So next slide, and that is the end of section 1. Any questions? I hope not, because this, like I said, this was a very quick section. And I was rushing through it because, like I said, there is no need for us to go into that much detail about this. Then now we will slow down a bit, and inshallah we will continue with our presentation on section 2. But if we do have any questions coming in, inshallah, I won't be looking at them, but Officer will give me a heads up. So if we go to the next slide, our first circle has gone green. We have covered our first section, which is what is zakah. So we're about to move on to our second section, which is zakatable goods. Let's move on. Section number 2, zakatable goods. What are we going to cover in this? Which things do we need to pay zakah for? Calculating zakah, and then some examples where I'm going to need you guys to come in to show me that you guys have understood, inshallah. Zakatable goods, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, zakatable goods / nisab, because this is also known as nisab. The first thing you will see popping up would be gold. So gold, how much gold do we have to, what was zakah? When do we pay zakah on gold? When we have 87.48 grams or 3.08 ounces of gold. In small writing I've written, which is classically written in books of fiqh, 20 dinars, or in Urdu books of fiqh for the Asian and the Pakistani community, 7.5 tola it usually says, but to the Western audience none of those make sense. So that's why I put grams and ounces up at the top. So if you have that much gold, you will look at what's the total amount, market value of this gold on the day you're paying zakah, and then you'll pay 2.5% of that. And we will cover this inshallah as we go on. So this was gold. Next thing that we have to pay zakah for is silver, and that's 612.36 grams of silver, or 21.6 ounces. And I think gold usually it works in grams, and silver works in ounces as for more commonly anyways. That's what, if I'm not mistaken, that's my assumption, and I think that's what I read somewhere as well. Again, we have 200 dirhams / $52.5, which won't make sense to most of the Western audience here. Next thing, so with silver that we've just covered, silver, same thing. Most people pay it that way, where you look at this, I have this much silver, what's the total value of this in money, then I pay 2.5% of that in cash. We will look at it inshallah as we go on as well. Actually, yeah, we'll cover it at the end of this slide. So the next point is goods bought with the intention of selling them, and this says same nisab as silver, meaning let's say now gold, for argument's sake, yeah, let's say 87.48 grams. This is not going to be nowhere close to the actual price of gold. When you need to calculate it, just go online. There are plenty of websites to check the rates of gold for that day. But I'm just giving you an example for our understanding. Let's say, for argument's sake, that 87.48 grams cost £200, which is nowhere close to the actual price of gold as far as I'm aware. So if it costs us, let's say, £200. Now, what's 2% of £200? 2.5% of £200. You calculate that and you will pay. So let's say you had this much gold, which equals to £200. Now you will pay 2.5% of that, which would be about £5. Out of that £200, you just need to pay £5 in zakah. So that's one thing. Silver, likewise, if you, let's say you had silver, and let's say you had 612 grams of silver, and this in a market, for argument's sake again, it equals to £200. So that means this is the threshold, even though the threshold is actually higher. This is just for our understanding. Let's say this is that threshold. If you have less than that, you don't have to pay zakah. If you have £200 or above, then you will pay zakah. Okay, so this would be silver. If you have silver which is worth £200 or more, then you will look at your total value and you will then pay that 2.5% of that. Next thing was goods bought with the intention of selling them. This would be same nisab as silver, meaning if, for argument's sake, 612.36 grams of silver costs us £200, so that means when somebody reaches that threshold, that person must pay zakah on his silver. Now he has bought something that he wanted to sell on. Maybe he sells phones in his shop, or maybe he bought a house which he wants to sell. He bought it with the intention of selling. So now obviously the house is going to be worth a lot more than £200. So if that thing he bought is less than £200, let's say he bought a notebook or something to sell, it's less than £200, and he only bought that one notebook. So now he's not reaching that threshold, is he? So he doesn't have to pay zakat on that particular notebook that he bought to sell off. But if he bought a few hundred copies of notebooks, and all of those notebooks, they cost more than £200, now he's gone past that threshold. So now he will have to pay zakah. So if you bought something with the intention of selling it. So gold, silver, if you buy something with the intention of selling it, and it reaches that same threshold as what silver, the value of silver is in the market. And then currency, once again same nisab as silver, meaning if, for argument's sake, sticking to our previous calculation, 612.36 grams of silver cost, it means it would cost you in the market £200. So that means when you have £200, you need to pay zakah. You need to pay zakah, or more than £200. Once again, I want to reiterate, this is not the actual figure. Please check the rates for silver or gold on the day you're about to pay zakah and calculate it like that. And I will mention how to calculate it in a shortcut as well next. If you go next, there's a small footnote. There is also zakah for specific types of animals and so on and so forth, but that's not related to us. Like I said, we want to go down to the absolute bare bones for us. Next slide, inshallah. Now, just a quick note. Simplest way to calculate zakah is by calculating 2.5% of total amount. Let's say you have silver, which is worth 500 quid. You have gold, which is worth 500 quid. You have currency. You have your wealth, your cash. You've got, let's say, 10,000. So 10,000, 500, that makes 11,000. You do 11,000, the 2.5% of 11,000, and pay whatever that is. That's the simplest way to calculate it. But I remember very well, when I was in school, I used to hate percentages, and I still do. So if you don't like percentages, do this. Take the total amount divided by 40. So let's say we have, let's say we've got 1100. That was our example, wasn't it? I'm gonna quickly pick up a calculator here. I wish I could display on the screen for you guys as well, but you'll just have to trust me on this. So I'm gonna put in there 1100, and if somebody's good at calculating percentages quickly, then we could do a cross comparison as well. So I'll do 1100 divided, or was it 11,000? I can't remember. I think 1100, wasn't it? Divided by 40. Yeah, that would give us 27.5. That would mean £27.50. That would be your zakah. So if you think about it, it's not really that much, is it? So alhamdulillah, our religion is actually really beautiful in the sense that there's only a minute amount of contribution we have to make for the sake of the society, and there are even further conditions. You don't even have, sometimes a person might have this much, but he might still not pay zakah. We'll cover that later as well. So, but for argument's sake, if we were to pay that, who is it going to? To the poor and the needy. This is the beauty of this, the teachings of this ummah that the ummah has received through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we pay zakah and it benefits our community. Look at the Bani Israel. They would their zakah, their sacrifices, whatever they would have, they would place it out on a mountain or wherever, and a fire would come down, consume that. The community would not benefit from it. So alhamdulillah, our zakah, and the best people to pay zakah to are who? Our close relatives, and we will cover which relatives as well, inshallah. So that's another thing. Our zakah benefits those that are close to us. Even though it's a compulsion for us, it's an obligation for us, but look at the beautiful way that we can benefit people around us through this. And only £27.50 out of that 1100 we have, which is not a big ask. Okay, next. Now, examples, your turn. So give your answers in the comments. A shopkeeper buying a mobile phone to sell it off. This mobile phone is worth £600. Yeah, so we're going to stick to that example we've had from the beginning. Your threshold for zakah, the silver threshold is what? £200. So this phone has definitely gone above that value. Now this shopkeeper's bought this mobile phone to sell it off. Would he have to then pay zakah on this? So let's see who is gonna get this right. I'm gonna try to open up as well the comments, see what we've got going on. Okay, so whilst you guys do this, I hope somebody actually makes an attempt to answer this. I will go on to the next example as well, so we'll kind of wrap up the answers all together at the end. Okay, so this was the first one. Second example, you buying a phone for personal use. This phone, keeping in mind, is also £600, so it does cross that threshold of silver. So let's see, do we have to? Oh, by the way, people, please, I know, try to keep the questions related to, if you have questions, please try to keep them related to the content that we're covering on the slides. We don't want it to turn into a Q&A about zakah. However, there is a number rolling, you'll see it scrolling past. If you do have any specific questions, send us those questions on there. We will try to reply to them in private. We'll try to get back to you as soon as, but during this, obviously, we don't want it to go off topic too much. So yeah, a shopkeeper buying, that was one. You buying a phone for personal use, that value is £600. Would you pay zakah on this or no? That's another one. Okay. Now then, car for personal use, this is worth 7,000, way over that threshold of 200. So would you have to pay zakah on this? This car that you bought is for personal use. Are you going to pay zakah on this or no? Next example. You placed a, oh, this one's a tricky one. You placed a house on rent and the total house value is £100,000. You placed it on rent. So does that mean at the end of the year you have to pay 2.5% of that £100,000, or maybe including everything else that you have, all your property, add it together? Do you include this £100,000 into that calculation or no? The question. Even if you don't know, guys, just take a guess at least. So a fridge this is another tricky-ish one. So fridge in a grocery shop is worth £7,000. It's the fridge in a grocery shop. Would the person have to pay zakah on that or no? Okay, somebody responded zakah of £15. I guess that's the response to the first question we asked. To be honest, I haven't calculated how much, but yeah, definitely. The first question was a shopkeeper buying a mobile phone to sell it off. And what was those? Remember those? It's only those four things for us: silver, gold, currency, and the thing that you bought with the intention of selling off. That's what you have to pay zakah for. So he's bought a phone with the intention of selling it off. He has to pay zakah if it crosses that threshold. He's bought it with the intention of personal use, no zakah. Likewise, another comment, no on personal car. Yes, it's your personal car. It's not gold. It's not silver. It's not, you haven't bought it to sell it off. It's not currency, obviously. So there's no zakah. See how those categories actually help us to understand what zakah needs to be paid for and what zakah doesn't need to be paid for. Okay. Yeah, this fridge one. Your first example, yes, you should pay £10. That's weird, isn't it? We've got £15 and £10. I haven't calculated it. You guys will have to decide who's right. So, what about this fridge one, by the way? Come on, let's see who's getting this. Oh, next slide then. In the meantime, fourth example, yes, zakah due on the rental if over £200 per month. Yes, but we're not talking about rent. I'm saying that house is valued at £100,000. That house's value. Would he have to pay zakah on that? I'll give you the answer because I think the brothers hinted towards it. No, he doesn't have to pay zakah on the value of the house. Why? That house is not currency. It's not gold. It's not silver. He's not built it with the intention of selling it. He's not selling the house. He's just renting it. So what he will have to pay zakah on is the rent money that he's got coming in. I hope that makes sense. Next slide is diamond at home. This is not for sale. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to give an answer about the fridge before I say it. I haven't said all the examples, to be honest. I will give you answers at the end of it. Diamond at home. You have a diamond at home. What should you do? I put not for sale. I did not put the value because I really don't know how much diamonds cost, and I didn't want to put 50p or something, and then you guys say, come on, man, diamonds are not worth 50p. But yeah, diamonds at home, they're not for sale. It's not for sale, this diamond. Let's say it's worth, for argument's sake, don't criticize me if I get the pricing slightly off. Let's say it's worth £7,000. I don't know how much diamonds are worth really. But zakah or no zakah? Yeah, around about right. So, diamond. And the next final, I think this should be the final example, the next one. Artificial jewelry. So this is not made out of silver or gold. Artificial jewelry. So, would you have to pay zakah on that or no? Interesting. Would we have to pay zakah on this or not? Okay, so now let me quickly give you a quick run of the answers. Yeah, so let's go back to the first example. that we had, which was a phone. Actually, yeah, we covered the phone. He bought it to sell it off, obviously there is zakah on that. The second one was personal use, there's no zakah on that. Third one was personal car, we covered that, no zakah on that. Fourth one, a house and rent, we covered that. Oh wow, I didn't realize we covered those. Fridge, well, let's see, is that fridge gold? No. Is it silver? No. Is it currency? No. Did he buy it to sell it off? No. He's not bought the fridge to sell the fridge off. He's bought it to store food or whatever is in there. So yes, the food and whatever's in there, that's his product to sell off, but the fridge isn't. So even if the fridge is worth 7,000, he will not include that in his total value when he's adding up his zakah. Okay. What if the car was bought with the intention of personal use, however sometime later it is sold? Is zakah then due? Yes, zakah will then be due on the currency that you make from there, because then you'll have currency, won't you? Yeah, and then it's those four categories again: gold, silver, currency, goods bought with the intention of selling it. But until you've sold that car off, if you bought it for personal use, you later on make the intention of selling it, you will not have to pay zakah until you've actually sold it and you've got the currency. It's the intention at the time of selling it. Whereas if you had the intention of selling it, but then you bought a car and you're like, I actually like this one, I'm going to keep it, you don't have to include that in your zakah as well. You don't have to pay zakah for that as well. Okay, let's now, diamond. Is diamond gold? No, not as far as I know. Is it silver? No. Is it currency? No. Is it for sale? No, we've said it's not for sale. So you could have a really expensive diamond at home, but when it comes to paying zakah for that diamond, you won't have to pay zakah. This diamond and these things will come into play later on though, inshallah. We'll try to get covered in about an hour or so. I'm thinking I'm a bit conscious, we might go a bit over, but let's see. Okay, artificial jewelry. Is it gold? No. Is it silver? No. Is it currency? No. Is it bought to sell? Well, that depends. I don't clarify here. Let's say it's for your personal use, then there is no zakah on this. Yeah. If it was bought to sell off, then yes, it becomes merchandise. Okay. Next slide. Important question. Multiple things under the given threshold. Let's say you have gold. Let's say you have gold, which is, let's keep the threshold for gold and silver the same. Yeah. If you have 200 pounds worth of gold, for argument's sake, zakah, you Islamically, for example, you have to pay zakah. If you have 200 pounds worth of silver, you have to pay zakah, even though their threshold won't be the same as, I think. So 200, but you've got 110 worth of gold, worth of silver, and only like 50 worth of gold, 50 pounds worth of gold. That adds up to 160, but then you have 50 quid on top as well, and cash. So in total, you've gone past that 200 limit, haven't you? Yeah. So you add, if you have less than the threshold, you add those things together and see the minimum threshold for silver, which is 200. Does this, all of this added together, reach that? So I have cash, I have gold, I have silver, and I added it together and it was above 200 pounds in total value, then yes, we will have to pay zakah on that. If it was under that, then we will not pay zakah on that. Okay. I feel a bit bad. Okay, now this is the end of section 2 on the next slide. Do we have any questions about what we've covered here? In the meantime, I'm going to quickly go up. Somebody asked, do I have to pay zakah on my child's saving? My child is under the age of 18 and in full-time education. Under the age of 18 doesn't matter. We have to look at if they are Islamically baligh. Okay, because that's so you have given him the money, yeah? It's his property now, and if he's not baligh, then he will not have to pay zakah. If he is baligh, then yes, there will be payment, and I think we will touch upon that slightly when we cover the conditions for zakah as well. Okay, I think we should be good to. Do full-time students have to pay zakah on their student finance loan? This is an interesting one, but the scholars generally advise, because this is an easy one, like you can pay it off you're not forced to pay it off there and then. You've got quite a bit of flexibility with it, so you should not discontinue your zakah because of it, because it benefits the poor and the needy. Okay, so that was section 2. We've got 2 of our circles have gone to green now. We're about to move on to our section number 3, which are the conditions for zakah. So conditions for zakah, section 3, what mainly we're going to pay, who has to pay, and when do they have to pay it. Okay, next slide. What do we mean by basic necessities? Keep this in mind because I will be mentioning this in the next slide. So what do we mean by basic necessities? The things required for a person to go about his daily life, and without them, it shouldn't be there. Without them, life becomes difficult and problematic. For example, a house you live in, a car used for commuting to work, tools related to your occupation. So those are things that are your basic necessities. Why? Because without these tools, you can't do your job properly. If you can't do your job, you can't earn. Without the house, you got nowhere to stay. So if your house is worth, let's say even, 100,000, whatever, that's still a basic necessity. If your car is worth 20,000, still a basic necessity. You bought something to use for your work, it's still a basic necessity. Okay, now why are we saying this? Now let's move on to the next slide. Conditions for zakah becoming fard. One, who has to pay zakah? Firstly, obviously they have to be Muslim. Second, they have to be baligh, Islamically mature. Thirdly, they have to be aqil, sane, so sanity, which is like this is kind of a given for a majority, unless obviously there is some sort of a serious case of a where a person's intellect is totally overtaken and he reaches that level of insanity. That is detailed to that, but generally for the majority, alhamdulillah, I think this is a given that this condition is met. Oh, okay, be the owner of at least the amount of wealth that meets the threshold set by Sharia. For example, what does that mean? When do we have to pay zakah? Only when we meet that threshold. Let's say for silver, the threshold was what? 200 pounds. So only when we have 200 pounds worth of silver, or 200 pounds in currency, or in trading goods bought to sell off, if we have 200 pounds worth of that, then yeah, less than that, we'll add everything together. If it still does not meet that threshold, then we don't have to pay zakah. Okay, and then he must still meet that threshold after his debt has been deducted. What does this mean? He owes somebody, let's say I have 9,000 pounds. That's way over that 200 pounds limit, but I owe somebody 850 pounds. If I deduct my debt, I'm only left with 50 pounds. So I won't pay zakah. Why? Because first I have to pay my debt back. So this, if however I had 9,000 pounds, I owed somebody 8,000 pounds. So what am I left with? After my debt is deducted, I've still got 1,000 pounds left. Okay, so now I'm meeting that threshold. So you must still meet that threshold after your debt has been deducted as well, and then you must meet that threshold on top of your basic necessities. Yeah, let's say you have a really nice laptop, but you use it for work. That laptop is worth 200 pounds, even though there's no zakah on that laptop. But let's say you have, let's give a better example, you have 500 pounds in currency. Yeah, in currency you have 500 pounds. Now that's above that 200 pounds limit, isn't it? But you have to pay your electricity bill, basic necessity, because if you don't pay your electricity bill, got no electricity, you're sat in the dark and then you can't watch this. Second thing, you have to pay your council tax. You have to pay off your, I don't know what else what other payments do you have? You have to do your grocery shopping and all of that. Yeah, so you had 500, and once you've deducted these costs that were for your basic necessities, for your daily needs, that without that life is tough for you, life is really difficult for you, you need these, you must have these in your daily life. When you deducted those costs, you're only left with 100 pounds, so you still don't have to pay zakah. That's why I was saying our religion, it is not hard. It isn't hard. Zakah is not a tough subject. You just look at how much you have, how much of this do you need for your basic necessities. After that, do you still meet that threshold? Then give 2.5% of that to a poor person. and then passing of an entire year. What does this mean? It means that for example, 1st of Muharram, or let's say 15th of Sha'ban, because that's the next example I'm going to give you. 15th of Sha'ban, according to the Islamic calendar, 15th of Sha'ban. Before that, you had only £150 or something. On the 15th of Sha'ban, you've hit that £200 limit. You've got £200 worth, £200 currency. You've got no gold, no silver, no trading goods, but you've got £200. You've hit that threshold now. On that day is when you became a person who must pay zakah, but not straight away. 15th of Sha'ban from this year, now you'll go, and next year 15th of Sha'ban you will look at how much you have. No matter what happens throughout the year, unless you totally lose everything, but for majority of the people that's not the case. So I mean, it goes up and down, it fluctuates, that's fine. You had 200 on the 15th of Sha'ban this year, next year you go same date, 200 same date, and now you have £1,000. So you pay 2.5% of that 1,000. So a full year must pass. Let's go on to the next slide, which is, do I always pay zakah in Ramadan? So we kind of clarified that. We pay zakah according to the Islamic month in which we met the threshold, the nisab required to pay zakah. Okay, meaning on the day when we hit that £200 limit, as in our example, then we will see a year after that, do I still meet that? If a year after that, if I have £1,000, yeah, I still meet that threshold. If I'm below, then obviously I don't meet that threshold. So if a person reaches nisab limit on 15th of Sha'ban, he must pay by 15th of Sha'ban, meaning the next 15th of Sha'ban, meaning before 15th of Sha'ban or on the date. So here, if you look at it, the green color is where he can pay zakah. So you can pay zakah in advance. So that little circle is the 15th of Sha'ban. You can pay at any point before that. You can pay your zakah in advance. After that, if he delays it, he will still pay his zakah, but that red zone, meaning past 15th of Sha'ban, that's a sin for him because he's delayed paying his zakah. So on the day when you have to pay your zakah, on the day when you met that threshold, you have to pay your zakah on the day. This is according to the Hanafi Fiqh that we're speaking here. And on the day he will have to pay zakah, otherwise he will be considered sinful. And so the more he delays zakah, he will still have to pay zakah, but that delay, because of that delay that he's making, he will be sinful. So, and it technically, if he's become, in Sha'ban, let's say, he needs to pay. It's good if he pays it, because it reaches the poor and the needy before Ramadan, so they can make preparations for their Ramadan as well. But if, for argument's sake, we were to switch this around, a person he met that threshold after Ramadan. Now he wants to pay zakah in Ramadan. Yes, he can, because he can pay in advance, can't he? So I hope that's clear as well. Okay, that's the end of section 3. We're doing well. Might be going a bit too quick now. End of section 3. Do we have any questions? I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to go one question. If you have found out recently that you have money, like you
had money back then,
weren't aware, then you're not really, it's not an obligation for you. You're not obliged to pay, because if you generally aren't aware, but when you do become aware, then you will become so the question was, if I had some money, I was not aware that I had this money. Now when I become aware of it, would I be sinful for not paying zakah? No, because if you weren't aware of it, I don't know, see, I can't think of a scenario where that would be the case, but let's say you found some buried treasure in your back garden. So but you will have to pay zakah. Actually, buried treasure is a separate topic in zakah anyways, but and then I think we'll leave it to there. I don't really want to go into too much detail and confuse myself and you guys. Okay, so that was the end of section 3. Now then, We go to the next slide. 3 of our circles have gone green. This means we've covered 3. So by now we should have a good idea of what is zakah. Zakah literally means literally means purification. What in Islamically means giving somebody a portion of your wealth, making them the owner of it. What were the zakatable goods? Main 4 categories we covered. What were they? Gold, silver, currency, and goods bought with the intention of selling them. That's it. Therefore, for pretty much all of us that are watching, I think this would be the case. This would be the only thing that would be concerned about. Next thing would be spending zakah. Section number 4, spending zakah. Who can receive zakah? So in this section we're going to cover who can receive zakah. Can zakah be paid to relatives, and if so, then which ones? And what does it mean to make somebody an owner when paying zakah? Because I've mentioned this a few times so far. So let's move on. The Quran mentions the people that Quran mentions, or the things that the Quran mentions for zakah in this ayah in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah 60. The poor, needy, appointed officials, inclining the hearts, freeing slaves, helping those in debt, in the way of Allah, a traveler. For a majority of us, we're only concerned with the first 2, poor and needy, the poor and the needy. Well, who are the poor and the needy? We will look at that as well. So now, who are the poor and needy? Let's go to the next slide. There are 3 types of people. A person who has to pay zakah, but he can't take zakah, and that's obvious. Obviously, that's somebody who meets that threshold. He's past that threshold. The second is somebody who doesn't pay zakah, but he still can't take zakah. What sort of who could that be? He doesn't have to pay zakah, but he still can't take zakah as well. Third thing, he doesn't pay zakah and he can't take it. That's simple. He doesn't meet that threshold. He's below it, and he's not the second category. So that he's generally the third person would be whom we generally would consider poor and needy Islamically. So who is that second person? I'll take a couple of minutes to explain this. Who does not pay zakah and yet can't take it? It means he is not hitting that, in our example, the £200 limit. He doesn't have that much in gold, silver, currency, or trading goods. However, maybe he has other things which are not one of these 4 categories, because then these 4 categories, if it's not one of these, like he could have a diamond which he doesn't have to pay zakah for. So he's only got that diamond. He's got no cash, or not enough. No cash, gold, silver, and trading goods. At least not enough to add up to that £200. Yeah, but he has a diamond at home. Maybe he has 3 extra cars which are not his basic necessity, and all of these things which are beyond his basic necessities. What happens then? Now we look at the basic necessity, those things that are out of his basic necessities. If they hit that threshold of 200 as well, he can't take zakah. Why? Because we would say, look, you could go and sell this stuff and have money for yourself. You're in a position, yes, you're not in a position to pay zakah right now, but you, because of all this extra stuff that you have and its value, the value that it equates to, the total value of it is way above that threshold. So you could go and sell this and get money for yourself. So you won't have to pay zakah, but you're not eligible to receive zakah as well, because you've got all this extra stuff. Yeah. So now this is where we have to be careful. If I'm paying somebody, so this guy is poor, and I'm saying poor according to my standards, let's say, and I think he's poor because he only has this much. He only has a few thousand in his bank, and I have a few 100,000. I don't, but somebody else might. So, that person, whoever has it, will be saying that in their mind. So what happens then? See, I'm thinking I have a few 100,000, he only has a few thousand. So according to my standards, he's poor, I will pay him zakah. But according to Islamic standards, is he poor? No. Islamic standards are what we look at. So that threshold, is he below that threshold, and does he have anything extra that that would then equate to, and its value would add up to be the equivalent to that threshold? If so, then you can't pay him zakah. If he's below that and he has nothing extra, nothing beyond his basic necessities, that would mean, okay, it would, if it was beyond his basic necessities, the route for him would be go sell this off and get some money in exchange for this. So if he doesn't have any of those, he doesn't meet the threshold, he doesn't have those extra things, then he's the third category. He doesn't have to pay zakah, but he can receive it. Okay, so now next slide, which relatives can we pay zakah to? Because zakah is actually best if you pay to your close relatives. It's best to pay zakah to your close relatives. Which relatives can we pay zakah to? We can't give it to usul, genitors and progenitors. I've forgotten how to pronounce this word because I learnt it as usul and furu. So basically, usul are your dad, granddad, everybody on that family tree, but not your uncles, not your uncles and stuff, your direct dad, granddad, and so on and so forth. And then furu, your offspring, so your children, your grandchildren, and their children, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And husband and wife, they cannot give to zakah to each other. In the Hanafi school of thought, a husband and wife, they can't pay zakah to each other. And number 3, everyone else can be given zakah. So if you look at this little mini diagram that you have, you're there in the middle. So those on top of you, those below you, so your parents, grandparents, those you can't pay zakah to. Those below you, your offspring. But those on your side, for example, your brother, so he's not from amongst that parents' side or offspring side, he's on the side. Your uncle, your auntie, your brother, your sister, they're on the side. So they're on that side green zone. The red zone is only the, I'll take another attempt at it, genitors or the progenitors and the offspring. I checked the pronunciation of this a couple of days ago when I actually searched up the word. I didn't know this word before this, to be honest. I just knew usul, but I might have just totally butchered the pronunciation here. So these are the relatives that you can pay zakah to, but remember, they have to be from amongst that third category, not the second category in the previous slide that we covered, where there are people who, even though they don't meet that threshold, but they have a lot of extra things that you could sell off, even to the extent, let's say, if I don't know anything about French and I have really complex books in French about various topics which I can't read. Are those my basic necessities? No, and I can't even read those. So then if those books are worth, let's say, £1,000, and I'm here thinking, look, I only have £150, I don't meet that threshold, I could take zakah, but I have these £1,000 worth of books which are totally useless to me. They are beyond my basic necessities now. So now I would be advised, no, get rid of these books, sell them, and make money, take money from there. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. So now next question would automatically be, then, if our relative falls into that second category, my relative, he doesn't deserve zakah, but how can I still help him or her? Check if another baligh family member, it has to be a baligh kid, because with nabaligh kids who is an Islamically mature, basically a child like that, there are issues there as well. For example, would I be able to, he's the owner of it, the nabaligh child is the owner of it, the parents can't utilize that money. Second thing would be, the nabaligh kid is not considered poor. He'd considered, if his father is above that threshold, then the nabaligh kid, because he's under the care of his father, he's considered the same as well. But you could check if another baligh family member, they fall below that threshold. Let's say he has your relative, your uncle, whoever, he is beyond that threshold, yeah, but he only has, let's say the threshold was 200, he only has £202, okay, but you still know, okay, look, that's not enough, I want to help him. But his son, he has no cash, no gold, no silver, and his son's about 20 years old or whatever, he's baligh. So you could pay to his son and help the family that way. That would be the first way. The second would be voluntary sadaqat. Voluntary sadaqat, there are so many blessings. They increase a person's life. They bring blessings into your sustenance and so on and so forth. So help them through voluntary sadaqat. Likewise, even you could pay zakah to your brother as well. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to tell him this is zakah. You have to make the intention of zakah. You could just tell him, here's a gift for you. You don't have to make him feel embarrassed, like, oh yeah, you're so poor, I'm having to give you zakah. You don't have to rub it in for him. So you could just give him zakah. So I think we're almost to the end now. One more slide to go. Can I just invite needy people for food and pay my zakah that way? We have to be careful about this, because sometimes what we do is we give money to somebody, or you go pay zakah, or maybe a charity, and they might just put at the sarkhan, a dining mat down, and invite people around and say, okay, come, all of you that are poor and needy, that are shar'i faqir, they're genuinely people deserving of zakah, you come and eat. But still, would zakah be fulfilled? So we said, making owner, we must make the other person owner of it, which isn't found in these such invitations. Why? Owner means you do whatever you want to it. You could take this food, eat it, take it home, give it to whoever. But when you're calling him to sit at a particular dining mat, he's just there and he's eating whatever is there. It's not like he can take it with him. He can take as much as he wants with him, or it's his now, or the way, if you wanted to, you could buy maybe ingredients, or you could actually buy the food, but you have to give it to him and say, this is yours, you do whatever you want to it, or you pay him currency and say, this is yours. But if you invite him, say, like, come and eat, all of you come and eat, there's a dining mat here, you haven't made them the owner of that zakah, have you? That money that you've spent, none of them have become the owner of it. So I hope that's clear. So, and making the owner means it is out of your ownership. You're no longer controlling anything. It's his or hers to do whatever he or she wants with it. That's in absolute simplified words. Okay, so that is the end of section 4. Just about in good time as well. So do we have any questions? I just want to go to the next slide as well, to show you that all of our circles have turned green now. So what is zakah? We've covered that. Zakatable goods, once again, there were only main 4 categories we looked at: silver, gold, currency, goods bought with the intention of selling them off. Third one, what were the conditions of zakah? Being a Muslim, being baligh, being sane, having had an entire year pass over that money that you have. Yeah, since you hit the threshold limit, you don't have to pay straight away, only a year after that. And see, if a year after that, if you're below the threshold limit, then you don't have to pay. If you're above, then you have to pay a total everything up, pay 2.5% of that. That's the easiest way to calculate it. Or total everything, divide by 40. And you have to remain within that threshold limit even after your whatever money you owe to people, your debt has been deducted, your basic necessities have been deducted, you've taken obviously all of that, you've deducted that, you've minused that, and then you see, are you still hitting that threshold limit? So that was zakatable goods and the conditions for zakah. And then how do you spend zakah? You give it to somebody who falls into that third category, which is they can't pay zakah and they can accept zakah. Whereas some people can't pay, they don't have to pay zakah because they're not meeting that threshold limit, but they might have to still, maybe they still can't receive zakah because they have things beyond their basic necessities which they could utilize, sell off or whatever, and they could earn an income through that. So I hope that's clear, because like I said, zakah is seen as a very daunting subject. If you have any questions, now is the time to check them out. We're almost at the end of our time that we had decided. I really tried my best to get it covered in the time. Alhamdulillah, we managed. Somebody sent a question not related to this subject, but as Masjid is closed due to COVID-19 for Jummah, do we do Zuhr Salah at home, or is the Masjid doing a live link or video conference? Even if the Masjid was to do a live link for Jummah, it is only so that somebody can listen to the speech at home. It isn't so people can start to pray at homes, their houses. So pray your Zuhr Salat at your houses. That's technically the child's property, isn't it? Is there zakah on child benefit? That's technically, as far as I'm aware, I don't have a child, so I'm not aware of the full process, but it's the child's property, yeah, what is meant to be spent on that child. So you would just spend it on the child, and if you've spent it, it's not really included in your zakah things anyways. If not, I don't know if it's the child's property, then no. If it is a parent's property and you haven't spent it and you've kind of accumulated it, then obviously, but I don't know legally whose property it is.
Saving money for a child.
So parents are saving up money for their child. They haven't yet handed it over to him, so the child has not yet become an owner of it. So yes, they will be paying zakah on that. So yeah, if you owe somebody money, let's say, we'll go back to that example again. I have £1,000. Our threshold was £200, so you're above that. But I owe somebody, so my total of everything is £1,000. Yeah, my gold, silver, whatever, everything's £1,000. But I owe somebody £900. You deduct that because you need to pay him that. So you deduct that. What are you left with? Left with £100 below the £200 threshold. So you deduct your debt, you deduct your basic necessities, your costs for those, like your bills, your grocery shopping, whatever, so that you need for that time there and then, not that I'm gonna need this next year or whatever. And then you see what are you left with. If somebody owes you money, you've got a few options. You know you're gonna get it back. You could either pay zakah on it in those years that he has, and you could pay zakah from yourself, a certain percentage of that, or you could alternatively, when he gives it back to you, then you could pay. But if he kept it for 2 years, you'll have to pay zakah for your 2 years that he kept it with him. If you can afford to, then just pay for that every year. No, you don't become sinful because you got both choices. You could either pay beforehand, even though he has the money, or you pay when he gives it back to you. One thing I think has just popped into my mind is, for these things that you have, I don't think it's actually, yeah, there's no need to mention it now. It's just, so is that it? So yeah, I think that looks like, so a wrap up now. May Allah bless all of you for joining in. We've got Ramadan live stream starting soon, inshallah, at some point next week. So just make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and just follow us on other social media platforms. That way you'll be on top of everything that we're doing, inshallah. We'll be doing few live streams, a number of them on a daily basis during Ramadan, to make sure that we're kind of keeping on top of that, because unfortunately we're in a situation where we might not have access to the masjids, but this is an opportunity for us to keep learning about our religion. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to do so. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of us and all of you for attending and participating. Ameen.